Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Today on location at Jasper's in Midtown, right there, right across the street from where I went to high school, basically, is where we are. You know, this place, we always talk about it being a great place for Preds watch parties and things like that. And of course, you know, great spot before the games because they got the parking and everything, you know, right there by downtown. And today we are here because we as a station are having a little celebration. Not exactly sure, Ian, if I could tell the folks what we're celebrating tonight after the radio program, but I expect to see you tonight here at Jasper's.
Hopefully I can make it.
Hopefully you can make it, but a little bit of celebrating, which would not be possible without you guys, the fans, who have just been awesome. So we're very, very excited about that. Okay. I want to start with this, and I'm not going to lie to you. There's nothing newsworthy about Treylon Burks that makes me want to get this Treylon Burks take off my chest, but it is just how much I'm hearing about Treylon Burks. Even the update that led into the program. The first thing, Nick Frazier, newsworthy, DeAndre Hopkins talking about Treylon Burks. And not only that, I was listening to Robbie and Joe this morning, and they're sitting there talking to Paul. You know, what do we think about Burks? What about the impact of Burks? And then a couple of weeks ago, Brian Callahan got up there, and he was talking about how important Burks is going to be. And then I'm listening to the start of the midday show today, and they're talking about Burks. And I'm listening to the Bussin' with the Boys podcast Brian Callahan did. And by the way, Ian, I don't know, have you listened to Brian Callahan on Bussin' with the Boys yet?
No, not yet.
Tell you what. I like this Brian Callahan. Pissed me off yesterday with the everybody's doing great thing, but I think I might like this Brian Callahan a little bit. Anywho, I say all of that because he was asked a question by one of the roadies, you know, that's on that program. And they say, you know, oh, now you got a chance to ask the Titans coach a question. And the guy was like, coach, what about Treylon Burks? And I'm like, enough with the Treylon Burks stuff. I am done waiting on Treylon Burks to become a consistent contributor. And that's coming from somebody in me who thinks that Treylon Burks has superstar ability. I saw it the first day at training camp, his rookie year. He was the story. But we've had 2 seasons worth of games. We've had 34 games. And you just can't count on him. I am over the optimism that Burks can now be a really good player because we've had 2 years where we've gone into the year with the optimism. And I say I guess I'm talking about me. I don't know how the rest of you felt, but I went into the 2022 season thinking, hey, like they replaced A.J. Brown with a younger, cheaper, less injured version of A.J. Brown. And Lord, was that wrong? I mean, then last year, Treylon Burks came in his rookie year. He had the asthma. He was out of shape. And last year, he was as dedicated as you could be, flying a Cessna plane, the kind of plane that I look at and I'm like, if I fly on that thing, I might die. And he flew that to get to OTAs on time. He had a wonderful offseason. He had a wonderful training camp. Ryan Tannehill was talking about, man, my trust in him is so high this year. And they didn't do anything. And so we've had 2 years of waiting on Treylon Burks to become a consistent contributor. Why do we have to wait year 3? I'm over the whole, well, Brian Callahan says Burks will have a role this year, so we're going to find a role for Treylon Burks. I'm over that. There is no role for Treylon Burks on this team. There are 6 guys that they plan on throwing the football to before they plan on throwing it to Treylon Burks. Ridley, Hopkins, Boyd, Spears, Pollard, Okonkwo. 6. I'm sorry, but no coach sits there and says, all right, what's our role? What's our plan here for our 7th receiver? Nobody does that. But I'm also done kind of crapping on Treylon Burks, right? Like I read that article in ESPN.com last week that said the Titans should eat $6 of the $8 million still owed to Burks on his contract in order to acquire a 6th-round pick in next year's draft. I'm like, well, that's stupid. I'd rather have him as a backup receiver in case somebody gets hurt than eat $6 of the $8 million and get a 6th. So I guess what I'm saying is I just kind of think that the Treylon Burks thing, it's a non-story to me. I don't care. I don't, Coach, well, what about Treylon Burks? We don't ask Coach about other backups. Coach, what about Jack Gibbons? Coach, what about Rashad Weaver? Coach, what about Dylan Radins? We don't do any of that, do we? Burks is the only one. And maybe it's because he has more potential than those other guys. Maybe it's because he was taken in the first round. Maybe it's because the coach got up there after they signed Tyler Boyd and he was like, oh, no. We still care about Treylon Burks, even though, again, who are you going to throw the ball to? Him or Ridley? Who are you going to throw the ball to? Him or Hopkins? Him or Boyd? Him or Spears? See what I'm saying? So I'm done crapping on Treylon Burks and saying like, oh, he's a bust. He stinks. Get rid of him. He doesn't. I mean, don't cut him. I mean, it's not a bad thing to have a backup on the team because I don't know if you've watched the Titans over the last handful of years. They get injured in the NFL, especially this team. And the other thing I'll say about Burks is this. The cream always rises to the top in the National Football League. Sure, Tom Brady needed 2 periods, but do you really think if that had never happened, that Tom Brady would have never become a great quarterback? Or do you think that Tom Brady would have found his way one way or another? We on our station have an example of the cream always rising to the top in Derek Mason. Derek Mason is the best wide receiver the Tennessee Titans have ever had. Ever. And he didn't start a single game in 1999. He had 19 targets. Next year comes, Kevin Dyson tears his ACL, Yancey Thigpen, old and injured. He's kind of a pawpaw at that point. And Carl Pickens was injured and he went crazy. They put Derek into the lineup, 5 targets, 5 catches in the first game, 6 catches on 7 targets in the second. Yards in a season that year. Maybe that happens for Treylon Burks. Now, Chris Sanders, I think, is a good example of somebody. Again, Chris is going to be on later this hour. Chris is an example of a guy who was all rookie team in 1995. He was a huge contributor in 1996. Didn't have a good season in 1997. Didn't do much in 98. And all of a sudden, again, when everybody got hurt, and it was him and Derek Mason, he had 6 catches over 35 yards. He was the deep ball guy. I highly doubt that Mike Heimerdinger went into that season with Dyson, with Thigpen, with Pickens, saying, okay, here's our plan for Derek Mason. But because, again, the cream always rises to the top, after about 2 games with D. Mason in the lineup, I guarantee you Mike Heimerdinger was, all right, what's our plan for Derek Mason? And that goes back again to this idea of okay, if you're really optimistic about Burks, I'm not there with you. But at the same time, if you're just willing to cut bait and you don't want him around and you're like, oh, bust, get him out of here, I don't follow that either. There's no reason to dump him unless you can get something of value in return, because a backup receiver still has value. Again, just like a backup quarterback, those guys don't play the game for free. There is still value, especially in a receiver position where you've got some older guys in. But last offseason, I was fine drinking the Treylon Burks Kool-Aid. And boy, did I drink it. I don't know if you guys remember, but in Minnesota at the joint practices, I threw a tantrum when he injured his knee. I believe the line was correct me if I'm wrong, that I said that day, I don't want to say the season's over, but it's hard for me not to say the season's over when Treylon Burks got hurt.
Something like that.
So again, I did the whole Traylon Burks hype train. I did the whole talking myself into Burks. I did the whole forgiving the first year, the context, it's not his fault. I did all that. And last year he got an opportunity. Last year he got hurt. Then he didn't catch the ball. Then he got hurt again. Then he didn't catch the ball. Then he got hurt again. And then in the Houston game on the road, the one Will Levis got hurt in, when Will Levis threw a 70-yard bomb on the first play of the game, he didn't catch the ball. So just like I'm done talking about Malik Willis, and again, Malik Willis was a guy that we talked about a lot. They drafted Malik. We talked about Malik, thought about, could Malik be the future? Remember Ryan Tannehill? It's not my job to mentor Malik. Then Malik got in there. He was terrible. But then it was, well, let's see Malik year 2. Let's see if we don't ever talk about Malik now because we all know Malik sucks. And that's kind of where I am with Burks. So when I keep hearing this Burks, I'm like, oh my God, why? Like, of all the things with this team, and I know you guys don't care about right tackle, and I'm apparently the only person on the planet who cares about right tackle, even though the Titans have been a mess for the last 2 years and they haven't had a right tackle. That is important. Middle linebacker, who wears the green dot, that is important. Who is going to sack the quarterback? That is important. Is the second round pick going to be able to play, or is he going to go to Wendy's all the time? That is important. Traylon Burks at this point is not important. And if he ends up becoming a factor, good. And if not, well, we shouldn't be surprised because the Titans aren't taking Traylon Burks seriously, or else they wouldn't have gone out and added all these other pass catchers to play over. So enough with the Burks talk, people. It's like every question every day, Burks. What about Burks? Let's ask Hopkins about Burks. Burks. Enough. Traylon Burks is a backup, just like all the other backups on this team. How many questions are being asked about Malik? How many questions are being asked about Hassan Haskins? How many questions are being asked about, again, the guys that we don't expect to play? Anybody got any Trey Avery topics that they'd like to introduce today? That's where I am on Burks. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025 here on the program today. Again, we are live out at Jasper's, which we are very, very excited about. Speaking of the receiver position, and speaking, I would say, to an extent about Traylon Burks, there is one guy that we never talk about, who is never a problem, who nobody ever wears a jersey of, who yesterday when I thought about all the guys that weren't practicing and I saw him out there, I said, man, this guy just always keeps getting forgotten. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game.
I think you talked to Traylon a lot last year throughout the season. Have you talked to him a little bit just heading into this offseason about maybe the fact that there's certainly a lot of additions and top-level competition at this time?
No, I don't need to talk to Traylon about anything. Traylon's a grown man, He gets it.
Are we sleeping on him a bit?
Pardon me?
Are we sleeping on him a bit? Outsiders looking at that group and the additions?
Trying to think I answer that without like a negative sound bite. Are we sleeping on Traylon? Mm-hmm. Nein means no in German.
That was DeAndre Hopkins yesterday. Probably said, I don't want to start. I don't want to create a soundbite, and then made it a soundbite. Again, by the way, somebody tweeted me and said he literally started talking about me, the Traylon Burks hate talk, and now I'm tired of it. Ian, I did not start the Traylon Burks hate talk.
What do you mean? Like
I've never gone after Burks before.
No, I don't guess so. Trying to think
how
it was last year. Yeah, what we were talking about kind of last year going into the last season.
I was super positive last year. It was after this season.
Yeah, he had some good reports coming out of training camp.
Yeah, no, I was on board. It was when Burks proved ineffective this year that I was like, okay, well, can't count on him. Move on. Like, and I'm not saying move on, like get rid of him. I'm talking about, as far as depending upon him, move on. And they did. Calvin Ridley's not playing for free, folks. Tyler Boyd's not working for free, though Boyd is not making a lot of money. But, like, at that point, I'm like, all right, I can't count on you. Which takes me to a guy who I saw it on the practice field yesterday. And maybe over the last couple of weeks, I've been just thinking, and I've been thinking positively of Nick Westbrook-Akine. And I saw him out there on the practice field yesterday, and he looked exactly like NWI always looks. And I said to myself, you know what's funny? The Titans every year have put Nick Westbrook-Akine on the field for the last 3 years. Every year they throw him the football, really 4, if you count the fact that Corey Davis, Mr. Unavailable, was unavailable in his last game with the Titans in that playoff game against the Ravens, and Tannehill in the 2-minute drive is throwing the ball to Nick Westbrook-Akine, an undrafted free agent that year, who's really more of a special teams player. Nick Westbrook-Akine always answers the bell. Even though we all wish the Titans had better players, and we think maybe there's a chance that they do have better players this year, NWI always answers the bell. And so when I'm out there at the practice field yesterday and I see Tavondre Sweat's not out there because he's got to rehab something, one day of practice was too hard for him. We got to rehab. And then after that, I sit there, L'Jarius Sneed, he's not out there. His knees probably need a day off. It is what it is. And it's like, okay, everyone's going to make excuses for the guys who aren't out here and always, not NWI. NWI is always out there. And again, no matter how much they try to get better players in here to replace them, during the season, they are always throwing the ball to him. So why would this year be any different? Again, yesterday, I walked out there, saw the guys that weren't there, the guys we keep talking about, and I'm like, oh, God, here we go. Nicholas Petit-Frere not available. And all the talk is Boyd and Ridley and Hopkins and Burks. And I'm like, what about NWI? He never, ever gets mentioned. He plays all the receiver spots. He plays special teams. He mostly catches the ball when it's thrown to him. He's had some bad drops in his career. One against Kansas City comes to the top of my mind. I think there's another crucial drop he's had over the years. But again, they're not paying him $40 million. And clearly this administration, Rand Carthon and co., they must have liked what they saw out of him last year to want to bring him back when, again, NWI was a Vrabel favorite, and he's out there in free agency, and Rand Carthon probably went to Brian Callahan and said, hey, this kind of guy you want on your football team. And if I had to put money on it today, like if I had to, as the old man used to say, put it on the mahogany as to who's going to be more productive for the Titans in 2024, NWI or Traylon Burks, I would put my money down on NWI. Now, it's going to be a problem if he ends up becoming more reliable than Calvin Ridley. Then we're going to have a problem. But nobody ever talks about him. Ian, if you had to bet $1,000 as to who ends up more productive this upcoming season, Burks or Nick Westbrook-Akine, who would you put your money on?
Nick Westbrook-Akine, NWI.
And is it not crazy because they brought in all these guys above him? And yet, I promise you, NWI, he will catch the ball this year. I'll just get used to it. Saw him out there on the practice field, was like, man, we haven't talked about NWI at all this year. And guess what? NWI is going to play because he always plays. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. One texter says, Vrabel and his crony system was horrible. Absolutely, Burks will be able to succeed better now. Will he? Unknown. But to throw out the fact that this is a completely different offensive style in your estimation of Burks' ceiling is irresponsible. I didn't say Burks couldn't do it. I just said I'm not counting on Burks to do it. And neither are they. Because they paid Calvin Ridley all that money to count on Calvin Ridley. Because they can't count on Burks. They paid Tyler Boyd because they can't count on Burks. I mean, I'm the one that says that Burks, DeAndre said that he's one of the most athletic people he's ever seen. I've said Burks has just an unbelievable amount of God-given talent. If it never works out for Burks, I will look back at Burks. I won't look at Burks the way I look at Caleb Farley or the way I look at Isaiah Wilson or the way I look at Andre Woolfolk. I will look back at Burks the way I look at Vince Young, the way I look at Pac-Man Jones, the way I look at those players where I'm like, oh, what could have been. Like Pac-Man Jones, what could have been. When he got suspended by the commissioner, I thought Pac-Man Jones was the best player on that football team, and that was a very good team. One texter says the reason why the Burks hype train won't stop is because us fans don't want to accept how bad the A.J. Brown trade was, but I'm right there with you on Burks. If he makes a play, great. If he doesn't, well, that's what we should expect. I think Titan fans are pretty resigned to how bad that A.J. Brown trade was. I don't think there's like another angle to that, element to that. I don't think there's any of that. I think that the Titan fans are well aware of how bad the A.J. Brown trade was. Let me say this, though. I can promise you, the Titans do not regret that trade. Like that, I know it's, A.J. Brown has done all this stuff. And, Traylon Burks, I just feel very, very certain that the Titans do not regret trading A.J. Brown. I remember Floyd they always used to bring up the whole Randy Moss thing with Floyd, right? About, well, you drafted Kevin Dyson over Randy Moss. And Ian, you were here. He never once regretted that.
Nope.
No matter how much people talked about it, no matter how much Randy Moss said something to him when they were together in New England. Randy would have said, hey, man, it's Kevin Dyson over me. And they had a good chuckle about it, but he never regretted it because they had a philosophy and a system in place. And if you think about Randy Moss, I mean, you guys have seen the documentary. A lot of red flags there around Randy Moss. So he wasn't going to take Randy Moss. He wouldn't take Randy Moss again. That's why when it comes to all these red flags the Titans have been taking chances on over the years, I'm like, there's some good and there's some bad. If he was the GM, you wouldn't have drafted Caleb Farley. Hooray. But you also wouldn't have drafted Jeffrey Simmons. Wouldn't have drafted Corey Davis. But you also wouldn't have drafted Harold Landry. So there's a lot of give and take here, when it comes to that. But he doesn't regret it. And I'm telling you, I don't think the Titans regret trading A.J. Brown. More of your phones. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. Once again, we are live out here today out at Jasper's. And I do have a thought on the whole Traylon Burks and the other receivers and everything. We'll get to that. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game.
My question, with the significant upgrades we've gotten in the wide receiver room recently, what is your plan regarding Traylon Burks with him only having 1 TD in 22 games?
Yeah.
I know you've been asked this before in the media, but would love to hear it firsthand from you.
Sure, I think
Jack.
that's a topic of conversation these days. I'll tell you this: I only know what I've seen of him. Obviously, I know what precedes him just because I've watched it and I understand it. But from what we see on a day-to-day basis with Trey, he's been phenomenal. Like his work ethic, the things that he's done, does everything we've asked. He's got unbelievable physical talent, and it's a personal challenge to me and to our staff is how do we find the best role for Trey to come help us. Like I think he can be a good player. I do think guys get in these situations sometimes. For example, you know they trade AJ and they draft him. There's this intense amount of pressure on him to be AJ or to replace AJ, and I think that wears on guys sometimes when it doesn't go well to start. And it's hard to be a really good player at receiver as a rookie. I think it's hard. I think it's a difficult task, and so for him, there might have been a compounding factors of all that pressure he felt, and then to be able to go play fast and play aggressive and be free of that, I think is hard. So what I'm hopeful for is that the addition of these veteran players that we have in here, a new lease for him in terms of all I know is what he's shown me, and I don't make any judgments on what's happened before. And that opportunity to reinvent yourself in a sense, I think is going to be really good for him. And I've been impressed with what he's done so far, and I think he can play, but it's like a personal challenge for me to find a place for him to have some success because he's got the talent and ability to do it.
Hey, that was Brian Callahan on Bussin' with the Boys. I thought it was a great interview by those guys, and I thought that he said a lot of fascinating things. But there he was talking about Burks. And again, like, hey, it's my job to find him a role. I don't know where I'd put that on the priority list if I was the coach. One texter says, everyone keeps mentioning Burks, and you are the only one that says don't rely on him. I don't think you're being a Burks hater. I just think you are the only one being realistic per usual, says the texter. He said it, not me. So when you guys go, oh, there goes Jared Stillman saying that he's the only one who's being realistic, he said it, not me. Again, like, I was in on Burks last year. I was in on Chig last year. And then they forgot how to catch. And once that happens, it's like, okay, well, now I was invested in you before and I, was relying on you. And now I can't rely on you now. That's it. It's not always a bad guy, always a bad player, he's never going to do anything. I'm not saying that. It's just, hey, it's like going into the draft. If Traylon Burks was a superstar, or I thought Traylon Burks was going to be a superstar, then I wouldn't say, hey, Rome Odunze, I might want to do that. Like, I wouldn't be saying that. But this is different. Jason says, I see a lot of chatter that the Steelers would consider trading Traylon Burks. What do you think his trade value is? Would you consider taking an offensive tackle, Dan Moore Jr., straight up for Burks if you were the GM? So there is I don't know I don't know Dan Moore Jr., so I can't give you an opinion about yay or nay or whatever. But there is a player. So I think his name is Jamarle Saylor. And he played left tackle 2 years ago for the Chargers when Rashawn Slater got hurt. Rashawn Slater returned last year, and he played right guard for the Chargers. And I think he was okay. But again, he's played left tackle, he's played right guard. What's that tell me? Tells me he can play tackle and he can play guard. And if you can play right guard, you can play right tackle. If you can play left tackle, because again, it's all the footwork is you're on the right side of the line. So I think about that player, Saylor or the Chargers, because what happened, remember how I guaranteed that the Chargers were not going to take Joe Alt because I'm like, they already have 2 tackles. So apparently what happened at OTAs for the Chargers, where you're allowed to talk about these things because the super secret Titans do not let us tell you, oh yeah, he played right guard, even though, whatever. I think it's so silly, but that's a Ken Wisenhunt rule, and the Titans have just decided to keep it that way because Lord knows that Ken Wisenhunt, boy, he knew what he was doing. But anywho, so what the Chargers did at their OTAs is they put Joe Alt at right tackle. The first group they ran out there, Alt was not with the first group. Then they ran the first group back out there. They put Alt at right tackle, and they moved Trey Pipkins, their right tackle. Again, they have a right tackle. Is why I didn't think they would take Alt. And they put Trey Pipkins at right guard, and they moved Saylor to the bench. And so I'm starting to think to myself, like, Ian, he had decent PFF numbers. Again, not that that's the line of demarcation as to whether or not you're good, but I'm not going to go watch Charger tape. He had decent PFF numbers at left tackle. He played right guard last year. We know the Chargers have no wide receivers.
None.
That's a move I could see straight up Burks for this guy, because even if this guy isn't, the answer at right tackle, he at least has the versatility to be what I think would be a quality backup. So again, not saying that's going to solve all your problems, but yeah, I would consider trading Burks for something like that. The way you ended up with Dennis Kelly.
Yeah, the DGB trade. Yeah.
I would not consider trading Burks for like a seventh. That's nothing. JP in Greenbrier says we still don't have a right tackle. Well, take that up with the coach, I guess. One texter into the text line says, I have a topic idea for you. Oh, this should go well. Has any team in the NFL ever turned over more completely in one offseason than this team? All new coaching staff, so many new players, all new offensive philosophy. It's almost to the point where it doesn't make sense to call them the Titans. Completely different team taking the field on week 1 this year than on week 1 last year. I advise you to go watch the NFL Network documentary Houston 93, because the 1993 Houston Oilers were a wagon. Now, they had all kinds of fakakta stuff happening off the field. In fact, it ends with the old man saying, can you win some games with all this drama? Maybe. But can you win a world championship? I don't think so. And so after 93, the salary cap was put into effect. Now, whether or not this is that the salary cap was real then or not, I don't know, because I don't know what the rules were in 1994. But Bud Adams probably also had a self-inflicted salary cap, and they tore that team apart. I mean, it was a shell of itself the next year. Warren Moon, Mike Munchak, the entire defense basically gone. And so I would tell you that the difference between the 1993 Oilers and the 1994 Oilers is probably bigger than the difference between the 2023 Titans and the 2024 Titans. I mean, again, even though they went out and they signed Ridley and they signed Snead, the key players on this team are still the same. Levis, who was here last year, Simmons, who was here last year, Hopkins, who was here last year, Spears, who was here last year. I don't think the offseason is as drastic as everybody's making it out to be, other than the fact that the Titans spent a boatload of money. And they did. Pete says it's Sawyer, not Saylor. Whatever. Talking about the Charger tackle guard. The Titans can acquire him, and then I will figure it out. I don't think the Titans are going to do that, but Titans can do that, and we'll get all, go through that. One texter says, what Brian Callahan is describing about Treylon Burks is a mentally weak player. Mentally weak players do not win. I think there's a difference between being mentally weak and having empathy for what the guy went through, right? And I'm talking about the idea of having the pressure to replace A.J. Brown.
Yeah, that seems a bit extreme, mentally weak.
I mean, I have a lot of empathy for what he went through. Here's the empathy I have for Treylon Burks. That dude was coming along in 2022, and he got decapitated on a dirty hit in that Eagle game, and he held on to the ball for a touchdown, but that effectively ruined his season. Like, he was on the come up. And I want to say that when Burks scored that touchdown, it was like 10-7 or 7-7 or 14-7 or something. And it almost kind of felt like, okay, AJ got the first shot. Now Treylon got the second shot. And it looked like it was going to be that way because the previous 2 weeks, Cincinnati and Green Bay, Burks had been outstanding. And again, it's a dirty hit. Like, if the Titans had gone up to Amani Hooker, or the Titans had gone up to Kevin Byard and said, hey, man, I want you to go launch as fast as you can and go right at the head of A.J. Brown If he did that, that probably would have knocked AJ out of the game. So all that spanking the goalpost or whatever wouldn't have happened. And so that's the empathy I have for Burks. And I do think the pressure of replacing AJ Brown was heavy. One texter says, I heard Josh Wiley got a lot of run with the ones. Cannot confirm nor deny that because of the Titans rules. Do you foresee a scenario where he takes a spot from Chig? Callahan has historically used bigger tight ends. You know, when I talk about not relying on people, Wiley is injury prone. He caught 9 passes last year. I mean, Chig's a starting tight end. Now, Wiley outplays him, in the season, and then they start throwing the ball to Wiley more, that's one thing. But as far as okay, Chig, you're on the bench now, I don't think there's anything Josh Wiley can do that would put him above Chig. Alex says, Jared, can you name the longest tenured Titan? I think I can. I think the longest tenured Titan are the guys drafted in 2019. So Simmons and Hooker would be the 2 guys, because I think I remember seeing in the game notes last year that there were 4 guys that were on the team that made the trip to London in 2018 that would be making the trip again. Derrick Henry, Kevin Byard, Dane Cruikshank, and Corey Levin, I think, were those guys. And all those guys are gone. Morgan Cox showed up in 2020, the long snapper. I'm trying to think if anybody was a veteran or a free agent. I'm going to say the longest tenured Titans are the guys that were on that 2019 team, the 2019 draft picks. Because I don't think there was anybody signed in free agency in 2019 that's still on the team.
I mean, if you count like Corey Levin or something like that.
He's not still on the team.
Is he not on the team right now?
No.
So it would be somebody like that, or Jordan Roos, or Corey Levin. He was drafted in 2017, but if he's off and on the roster.
But he's not even on the team.
Yep.
So, I mean, he can't be the longest tenured Titan if he's not on the team. So I do think it's Simmons.
Landry is 18.
Landry, 18. Okay, there you go. Landry, that's it. And he was on the London trip. Chris Sanders joins us next on the program. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company. Hey, Nashville's best deal this week is Joyland in East Nashville. Joyland is a fun new concept by Chef Sean Brock, designed to spread joy through his love of cheeseburgers, shakes, buttermilk biscuits, fries, and fried chicken. Get half off a $30 Joyland gift card now while supplies last. TheGameNashville.com/deals and enjoy the best burger in town. By the way, we'll have a special edition at 3 o'clock, Jared versus Joe, early because of the Vandy UT baseball game that will be on today at 4:30. So with that, Chris Sanders joins us now in the program, former Titans receiver. Chris, I want to start with this. OTAs yesterday. No L'Jarius Sneed. No Tavondre Sweat. No Nicholas Petit-Frere. All injured. Yeah. Chris, the number one ability in the NFL is availability. Yeah. I know it's May 20th or whatever, but I don't like it. Your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, you don't like it either because you want those guys to get to know their players, and you just said it and you hit it on the head. That if you're not available to be out there, you can't get camaraderie with the team. Because if you look at the whole situation, Jared, the way you're going to know your defense, the way the defensive backs are going to have camaraderie, they need to be there. Even if you're hurt and even if you can't participate, I still think you need to be on the sidelines, even with a hat, just communicating with the other players, the offensive line PT. He needs to be there just hearing Bill Callahan's voice, or even hearing just the coach's voices. So that's the bad part about it. But at the end of the day, long as they're there when the kick of the football season starts, I think they'll be okay.
Chris, Treylon Burks, there's a lot that's been made of him, and I'm kind of sick of it because to me, he's a backup. And that doesn't mean that I don't think that he can eventually play well, but right now, if everything goes well for the Titans, they're not going to throw him the ball. They're going to throw the ball to the other guys that they're paying more money to. But it does bring me to you because you and Derek Mason had been banished to the bench in that 99-2000 season.
Absolutely. Yep.
And then Kevin Dyson tears his ACL. Yancey Thigpen's an old pawpaw. Carl Pickens goes off the reservation. And it's like, here come Derek and Chris, and they save the day. I say this because that's where, if Burks is going to make something of this, that's where it's going to have to be. And I just don't know in today's society if they can really sit down with him, while Brian Callahan keeps talking about, we're going to try to find him a role. I don't know if Brian Callahan can sit down with Burks and say, hey, man, if nobody gets hurt, you're not going to play. But if they do, we want you to play, and we want you to play well. How do you balance that kind of expectation as somebody who's been through it before?
It all determines your attitude, because we say this, I love saying cliches. It says attitude determines altitude. It all depends on what Burke does. If you sit there and you get upset and you're mad at the coaching staff, you're mad at different drafting, receivers or bringing different receivers in, you're going to go out there and you're going to play, terrible. But here's the thing that I love about that situation with me and Derek Mason. And the reason why I have so much respect for Derek Mason is because the Super Bowl season, he was the sixth receiver. But here's the thing that he did is he consistently stayed ready. He stayed ready. He didn't pout. He didn't get mad at Coach Steckel. He didn't get mad at Coach Waters. He didn't get mad at none of those guys. He stayed ready. Now, the situation with Burks, it's up to him. If he wants to sit there and say, okay, well, everybody doesn't believe in me, and then your attitude's not going to be right. But if you have the attitude to say, you know what, I'm going to stay prepared. I'm going to stay focused, because the history of the receivers that are in front of you could get hurt. So you got to stay ready.
Ian, it sounds like Treylon Burks, according to Chris, has two choices.
Yep. Get better or get bitter.
You have to, because I've been in that situation before. And here's the deal. I'm not going to act like when they brought Kevin Dyson and Yancey Thigpen in that I was all hunky-dory. I was pissed. I was upset. I was angry. I had all these emotions going on. But here's what I had to do. I had to channel those emotions and say, you know what? I'm going to line up right. I'm going to make plays right. I'm going to do everything in my power to be on the field. What happened the preseason year? I had 5 touchdowns. So now the coaches are like, we got to make sure we put this guy on the field.
Well, I also think you probably had 5 touchdowns in the preseason because you were varsity caliber playing against JV players. But that being said,
oh my gosh.
Chris Sanders is with us. I was listening to Brian Callahan on Taylor Lewan's podcast, and he was talking about, he's really excited about the defense. And I do wonder, we talked a lot about edge rusher, and they really didn't do anything. So it's still Landry, Key, and Weaver. Tavondre Sweat, who knows if he's, if he'll be relied upon. They still got holes at inside backer and safety.
Right.
Are you as excited about the defense as they seem to be? And let me say this, the defense in 7-on-7 got the better part yesterday of the offense, specifically McCreary, who looks like he just keeps getting better and better.
Man, the secondary. And this reminds me of when I got drafted in 1995. We had a great secondary. We had Marcus Roberts, we had Blaine Bishop, we had D. Lou, we had Chris Dixon. We had guys that were just veteran plays that knew how to win. Now you have a situation to where last year the Achilles heel of the defense was the secondary giving up explosive plays. So now you get a Woozy, you get Snead, you got McCreary, you got Elijah Moten, you got Hooker. I'm not saying they're just as good as that secondary, but on paper – they can be a darn good secondary because they bring a nastiness that Denard Wilson wants. So when you have a secondary that allows you to go man-on-man coverage, now the front can just go on and attack the quarterback because they don't have to worry about the back end giving up the explosive play. So that's why I love this defense. They're nasty. They're guys that want to fight. I mean, Snead choked Tyreek Hill at the line of scrimmage and, shut down A.J. Brown. Those are the kind of guys that you want on your roster, and that's exactly what the Tennessee Titans have.
Chris Sanders is with us. Chris, Levis, according to Jim Wyatt, was 7 of 10 and 7-on-7 yesterday, but I didn't think Levis was very sharp. He threw one ball behind DeAndre, 5 yards, threw another ball, I think, in front of Ridley about 5 yards or so. Missed on a couple. McCreary had a pass breakup. I just didn't think Levis was very sharp. I personally am not making a big deal about it because it's the first day of passing camp, but shouldn't the offense in the passing camp with no pads on and 7-on-7, shouldn't they be ahead of the defense?
I mean, they should, but you got to remember, Jared, there's a lot of faces that are different. I mean, you got Calvin Ridley that was with the Jaguars last year. I know Hot was here. Then you got Boyd from the Cincinnati Bengals. So he still needs to learn his players. He needs to learn the speed of the guys or where he wants the ball, and communicate it. So, I think that, they're making mistakes early and he's throwing the ball behind them. But at the end of the day, when you watch film and you talk it over and you talk about the vets and where they want the ball at, I think they're going to be okay. I don't think it's a situation to where you don't want to get alarmed about, but I think that with him knowing his players and watching film and correcting mistakes and understanding the speed of Calvin Ridley, I think they're going to be okay. He just got to make sure he stays healthy and make sure he keeps learning from his mistakes.
Chris, texter texted in and said that apparently Titans Twitter is all excited about Dylan Radins. And I have no idea if Titans Twitter is excited about Dylan Radins or not. I will say from what I saw yesterday, sitting there with Trevor, Trevor was very, complimentary of Radins about the way that, his technique and the shape he's in and the way he was leading the group.
Yep.
I don't have a lot of faith in Petit Frere. He wasn't out there yesterday. I don't have a lot of faith in Duncan at all. Is there a chance that the way Radins played at the end of last year, coupled with Bill Callahan, is there a chance that Radins could break through?
I mean, I think he can. I mean, and the reason why I say I think he can, number one, we got the coach with Bill Callahan, but then also he's getting more experience. I mean, if you look at the first year, him coming out, I mean, he and I say this in a respectful way, he looked really bad. I mean, his feet work was bad. He had no punch. He wasn't physical. But now you had a couple of years under your belt to where you understand your mistakes. You understand how to get better at footwork. You understand what you need to do better. And then now on top of that, you got one of the most experienced coaches ever in the NFL and put that together. There just might be a chance where he can contribute to being, on the offensive line. Yeah, he made some mistakes last year. Yes, he did some bad things his first year, but now he's getting better, and now he's understanding what to do, and I think he can be an asset to this team.
Two choices. You can either get better or get bitter. Chris Sanders, as always, great stuff. We appreciate you.
Appreciate you, brother. Love you, man. Bye.
Yep, Chris Sanders joining us as always on the program. Okay, because of Vandy baseball, and it looks like, I don't want to jinx it, Ian, but it looks like that we may actually get Vandy UT starting on time. We decided to move up Jared versus Joe. So we got a special 3:00 edition of Jared versus Joe. That's next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. And let me tell all the fine folks out there, speaking of that Vandy, Tennessee game, it is Vandy and UT in the SEC baseball tournament. And the expected first pitch is 4:30. We'll see if that actually happens. Vandy Baseball is brought to you by Smoky Mountain Tops, your countertop experts. Visit SmokyMountainTops.com. Also, we'll be at the Sounds tomorrow. So get excited about that when the Sounds take on the Charlotte Knights. They take them on tonight as well at 6:35. And you can listen to Sounds Baseball presented by Twin Peaks, Family Leisure, and Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Gabe Nashville studios. We are at Jasper's in Midtown today. Very, very excited about that. But due to the fact that Vandy Baseball is expected to come on at 4:30 today, we will have to, we won't have Jared versus Joe at 5 o'clock. So we decided, let's give the 3 o'clock audience a special edition of Jared versus Joe, especially knowing that Joe is going to be getting his scorebook out, his sunflower seeds, and he will be charting every pitch of the Tennessee Vandy baseball game tonight. So we want to get this out of the way ahead of time. So it's time for Jared versus Joe. Caroline is here. Hello, Caroline.
Hello, how we doing?
Outstanding. Let's get to Jared versus Joe.
Jared Stillman versus Joe Rexrode. Now on Stillman and Company.
On ESPN
1025 The Game.
Jared versus Joe is presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. Caroline, lead us off.
So this is a debate that Willie and I have had on the air, so I need to bring it here. Jared, you go first. J.C. Latham, 7th overall pick. What will J.C. Latham need to do or accomplish to be considered a, quote, home run pick?
So I have heard this discussion, and I think that if J.C. Latham can have the careers of the 3 previous left tackles, right? Brad Hopkins and Taylor Lewan were both first-round picks. Michael Roos was a second-round pick. Those guys were solid, good, above average, at times Pro Bowl caliber left tackles for a decade each, basically, right? I think Brad Hopkins was a left tackle from 94 to 2004, and I think Roos was 2005 to 2014, and Lewan was 2015 to 2022. So for the better part of a decade, those guys were all starters and above average Pro Bowl caliber star. I think that's what J.C. Latham needs to be. I heard Brian Callahan say on Bussin' with the Boys that when they were having the discussions about Jamar Chase and Penei Sewell, that they thought that, we were picking 5 overall. It needs to be a Hall of Fame player. And 7 is not that far from 5, but I don't think that he needs to be a Hall of Fame player for it to be a home run. I actually texted Willie when you guys were having this discussion, and I said, if he has the career of Brad Hopkins, I think it's a home run. If he has the career of Michael Roos, I think it's a home run. If he has the career of Lewan, maybe.
It's a hit.
It's a hit. I don't know if he ends up going back to right tackle, I don't think it's a home run, period. And if he goes to guard, I think it's a bad pick. So give me if he can have Michael Roos, Taylor Lewan, Brad Hopkins' career, it's a home run.
I'll say, I'm about the same, but basically to me, you need to have a decade of excellent left tackle play that's, top 10, 12 at his position in the league, right in that range, and multiple, I'd say, let's say if it's a decade, I'd say, 3 or 4 Pro Bowls. That's a home run. I think, if you're going to do it in baseball terms, you can have a really good career and have a triple, but I think a home run is a good decade of being one of the top left tackles in the league, and let's say 4 Pro Bowls. There's a home run. Touch them all.
4 Pro Bowls.
Bases.
4 Pro Bowls is a lot. Like, I don't think.
Don't take just one.
I think
they don't just take one tackle.
I think that Hopkins had maybe. I want to say Hopkins had 2 Pro Bowls, maybe. Roos had 1 Pro Bowl, 1 All-Pro. Lewan maybe had 2 Pro Bowls. You're asking for 4 Pro Bowls.
Well, it sounds like 2 triples and a double. Caroline's asking me in baseball terms. I'm giving baseball terms. It sounds like you just talked about 2 triples and a double.
Not a soft, Jared.
I just, well, on one hand, the Pro Bowl's all kind of bullcrap now anyways, so everybody gets an invite, and as long as you go or are on the first ballot, you're...
Yeah, exactly. So many people skip out and everything. You will probably go to at least a couple if you're pretty good, right? So, like,
Yeah.
I think 4 probably means that at least a couple of those years you're legitimately, like, definitely a quote-unquote Pro Bowler. So,
Okay, well,
yeah,
what about,
that is
like,
part of it.
Roos, in his case? Once, because All-Pro is real, that is legit.
Yep.
If Latham's an All-Pro once, then is it a home run?
Well, one All-Pro equals at least 2 Pro Bowls, if not 3. So we're going to throw All-Pro into the thing. Then a couple All-Pros to me, then that can be home run territory.
And it's also context. Does he have one All-Pro season and then followed by 4
Right.
or 5 super average seasons?
Here's the other thing.
There's got to be a consistent excellence has to be part of it.
Here's the other thing, too, that I think plays a role into this. If, let's say, Latham goes to 1 Pro Bowl and is fine, is a solid left tackle, but Olu Fashanu becomes Trent Williams, doesn't that kind of change the narrative of the pick?
I think it has
Say that
to.
again?
So if, let's say that Latham is solid, he's a good player, but Olu Fashanu becomes a Hall of Famer, Flozell Adams, then doesn't that kind of change the outlook of the draft choice?
Yes. Well, the thing is, first of all, the question's about a home run. So if he's solid, he's not a home run anyway. But yeah, absolutely. The better the guy you passed up on does, then that also, there's a little bit of a sliding scale there. And if we can ever get the Titans to admit that they actually would have taken Latham even if Alt was there, then you could compare him. But I don't have absolute confirmation of that.
I know that this is a different situation, but still same. Like, if CJ Stroud didn't have the season he had last season, like, would Scott Fitterer still have a job, the Carolina Panthers GM?
I don't know. They sucked.
That's
I know,
an
but I'm
interesting
just
point.
saying,
Yeah,
like, if CJ Stroud also sucked, would it have been as obvious as where we can say today, what Bryce Young turns into? Obviously, we don't know, but I think that we can say that Carolina today probably made a mistake taking Bryce Young over CJ Stroud. Fair?
Yeah, but you could also argue,
today.
but you could also argue that he got fired because he put that quarterback into such a horrific situation that we have no idea what Bryce Young is. I mean, either way, but I think you may have a point. I think you have a point, though, that Stroud having the year he did makes it look worse, no doubt.
I mean, I would have fired him, even though I don't think he's the one responsible for this. I would have fired him for that trade because I think that was an irresponsible trade that they made to move up from 9 to 1, even though Joe said, sell the house for Bryce Young. I would rather have Will Levis, who they could have picked at 9. I would rather have Will Levis and DJ Moore and the first overall pick this year and, the second rounder next year and the second rounder, the other one I'd rather have that with Levis at quarterback than Bryce Young and none of those things.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons he was fired. It was fireable.
Yeah. Caroline, what's next?
Okay, Joe, you go first. We'll continue with the offensive line theme. Is the Titans starting right tackle, at least for a majority of the season, on the roster now? And if so, who will it be?
How do you define who the starter for the majority of the season is? Like the most snaps, the most starts? Starts week 1?
No, not just starts week 1, but I would say just majority. Joe Rexrode with your semantics. I would say most snaps.
Yeah, I mean, majority of the season just means starts the majority of the games, right? More games than anybody else, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. I will say yes, and I will say it's Nicholas Petit-Frere. Petit-Frere, not Petit-Frere. He's not a Ferrari. He's Petit-Frere, little brother. He will be the starting right tackle unless he's hurt this year. I don't know how good he'll be. I think that he'll be good enough to be the starting right tackle and for them not to go out and find whatever their Band-Aid solution right now would be out there. Then there are other guys to provide depth, but I think he's the guy that they're focused on. And although I don't totally disagree that him not being on the field yesterday isn't the greatest thing in the world, I think he'll get the job.
So I do not think it's going to be Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a.
PT.
Ian?
PT. Caroline said it.
There you go. Thank you. Thank you. I know, but, I do not think it's going to be PT because as yesterday was proof, PT is just unreliable. He's never there. He's never there. He's either hurt, it's a gambling suspension, or he's hurt again, with another injury. We also forget that when he did play last year, he was awful. Like, people just completely dismiss that and say, well, he had the gambling problem. Right. So a bad thing then led to another bad thing. That doesn't give you credit for the bad thing. I think it's going to be Dylan Radins. And here's why I think it's going to be Dylan Radins. I have actually thought this since Vrabel was the coach, and I still believe it, that I felt like the Titans were going to try to fudge the right tackle position one way or another, draft somebody in the 4th round and say, we're going to try him, or they were going to go with PT, and that they were going to get out there training camp with no expectation that Radins is going to be the starting right tackle. And just by process of elimination, Radins is going to end up starting at right tackle. May not be week 1, but for the majority of the season, between a combination of PT being hurt, unavailable for something stupid, or just flat out bad, coupled with the fact that Jalen Duncan sucks, I think it's going to be Dylan Radins. And I just thought, Trevor was very happy about the way that, he thought Radins performed yesterday in OTAs, watching his technique and, his conditioning and everything else. I mean, if Radins can cut out the penalties that he had last year, I'm not going to say that he's a good right tackle because he's not. I'm not even going to argue he's a serviceable right tackle, but he's better than what they've had the last 2 years, minus those false start penalties. And so Radins has put in the work. He's showing improvement, and he's finally got somebody smart coaching him as opposed to just hitting the guy in the pad saying turbo over and over again. I just think that the one thing I'll say about Radins is he is reliable, right? Like, there's no question ever about Radins' effort. There's no question about whether or not, he didn't get his way and now he's going to check out, because he hasn't checked out after all the bad things that have happened to him. Again, I'm not saying he's good. I'm just saying I think Radins is going to be the starting right tackle for the majority of the 2024 season.
I really hope you're right so that we can replay you from a few years ago when you screamed at us about how there's just no way anybody ever improves. Also, I love how the Bill Callahan factor, that matters with him, but it can't matter with PT. The Bill Callahan
PT doesn't play. Where was
so
PT yesterday working with Bill Callahan?
I know. He missed a day, Jared. He missed a day.
I know.
In May.
He's unreliable.
He's never going to be there. He'll never be there because he missed 1 day in May.
Well, on top of the 6 games he missed for gambling, on top of the games he missed last year after he got hurt, I mean, he is unreliable.
Well, listen, look, again, I think it's a pretty good, I don't know. You could be right with Radins. You may be right. I think that I think they kind of look at him as a guy who could plug in inside or outside potentially, and we'll see. But no one's trying to, at least I'm not, trying to give credit to Petit-Frere for the gambling stuff. It was very stupid. I mean, he owned up to it, kind of talked about it. It was dumb. But what I will do, though, is I will look at it as a factor. Because let's remember that he came in as a rookie, and that was Dylan Radins' spot at right tackle. And it wasn't too long into camp. It was like, Petit-Frere is better than Radins. So there you go. Petit-Frere is taking that job. I don't think that people are dismissing that he had some really bad stretches in his brief play last season. But you're dismissing that he had some good stretches as a rookie, which is true. He had some good games as a rookie. And he won that job. He won that job decisively from your boy Radins, who had a year under his belt. And now
I think he won that job. I think he won that job via the process of elimination, that the other guy sucked so bad. That's what's going to happen this year. That's why I think Radins is going to win this job. I don't think Radins is going to win the job because Radins is good. I think Radins is going to win the job because I think that the PT is going to be unavailable and stink, and Duncan does stink. Like, Duncan stinks. I think we can all agree Duncan is not really in the competition to start at right tackle this year, right?
I think we can all agree that you can't go a half hour without making sure you say someone sucks. But, Duncan's going into his second year. He's got a lot of stuff to
Joe.
fix. Okay, Jared. There you go.
He got benched at the end of the year last year for Andre Dillard. What does that tell you?
Get that dopamine going. When you say someone sucks, it must just be like, it's like taking a puff of a cigarette. You're like a pack-a-day smoker who has to say
if Jalen Duncan doesn't suck,
oh,
then nobody
sucks.
sucks.
Oh, God, that feels good. Oh, thank you.
Let me say what. I might say people suck too much. There may be some truth to that. But if Jalen Duncan doesn't suck, then nobody sucks. Then you're Chris Sanders and everybody, I'm not going to, because everybody that's in the NFL is good because they're in the NFL. You have to pick one of the other.
Come for Chris Sanders.
Get better.
You don't have to pick one of the two. Some people suck, but they have to really suck.
Jalen Duncan really sucks.
Okay, Jared. There you go.
Do you think he doesn't suck?
You.
Do you
Carolina
think Jalen Duncan doesn't
you right
suck?
Now. Say it again. Say it again. Say the word.
Do you think he doesn't suck?
Dude,
I think that he doesn't suck.
He's a sixth-round rookie. He's a sixth-round rookie who was not good last year, who's not supposed to be. I don't think that he's completely devoid of any talent, but he's a backup. That's probably what he's going to stay, a backup.
Do you think Malik Willis sucks?
Yes.
Joe?
I'm not playing the who do I think sucks game. I'm not doing it.
Nobody
you
sucks
like
according to Joe.
No, but I mean, you say it so much, I'm not going to also say it with you. Hell with that.
More Jared versus Joe continuing. Plus, there is a topic. I'm getting called out. Then I'm going to make this a Jared versus Joe question that we will get to as well. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025. Join Cromwell Media along with local athletes and musicians at Hermitage Golf Course on June 20th for the 615 Open. Make a difference while supporting Souls for Souls. Every $20 raised goes to a new pair of shoes for a local child experiencing homelessness. Sign up to play or sponsor at 615open.com. Okay, Jared versus Joe is presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. First, let me tell everybody, purchase your tickets now for the Music City Grand Prix at the National Superspeedway, Friday, September 13th through Sunday, September 15th at musiccitygp.com, and use promo code GAME for a 20% discount now through June 16th. And the Indy 500 is this Sunday with coverage beginning at 10 a.m. Brought to you by Green Trees Company Dispensary, providing high-quality, legal THC products. Caroline, go.
Well, you said that you were going to take my job.
Well, I was going to let you get the third, and then I was going to take the fourth. You want me to take the third one?
I'll go ahead and take the third one.
Go ahead.
What is your concern level for Tavondre Sweat, Nicholas Petit-Frere, Legarius Sneed, and others not being out on the practice field yesterday at OTAs? Jared, you go first.
I mean, it's real. If somebody has a red flag, and the thing about red flags in the NFL are that when you've got red flags, it usually affects your availability, right? It's like Pac-Man Jones was a very, very good Titan, but his red flags cost him the ability to help the Titans win because he was suspended by the commissioner and subsequently traded by the Titans. So it's always about availability. With Legarius Sneed, do I think that missing the day of OTAs means his knees aren't going to be ready to play in the regular season? Probably not. But at the same time, like the reason that everybody else around the league was so skeptical was because this was a degenerative issue. And I know Legarius Sneed, Caroline told you, Titan fans, Legarius Sneed's knees are okay. And I know he said, look at the tape, but everybody could look at the tape. Minnesota could look at the tape, and they still pulled their offer worried about the knees. And the fact that he shows up right away and it's like, oh, no, we can't play him because of these bad knees in practice. I'm like, my God, it's already a problem. So that bothers me a little bit. Tavondre Sweat, the guy gets hurt after 1 day of practice. Seriously? 1 day of practice? 1 day of practice. And I know PK said this morning on your show, Joe, oh, it's a minor precautionary thing. And it's, okay, sure. 1 day of practice. One. That is so Traylon Burksian of him. It is disappointing. And then with PT, it's like, when's this guy ever going to be available? When's he ever going to be available? When's he ever going to be good enough to be relied on? And I think the answer is never, but, everybody else seems to think that it will be. So my concern level is existent because our problem, the red flags and question marks exist. And when you're not out there on the field, it allows me to continue to question whether or not you will be available when it actually matters.
Yeah, I've got a different answer for all three. It's just different levels of concern. With Sweat, not high because I saw him out there at rookie camp, and I know we can laugh. Like the Titans put out a video of him catching a TD, but obviously he participated Monday. I personally trust PK's reporting. So Jared, you're like, sure. You think PK's lying, or was his only source ever in Titans history Vrabel? You think that was the source for that, or
no?
I'm
not saying PK's reporting is wrong. What I am saying is it's like, oh no, this is again the Titans telling people, oh no, fans, don't be worried about this guy that we reached on in the draft and everybody thinks we screwed up on, but we've told everybody that the GM texted Rand and the GM said he was going to take him and it was actually a good pick in spite of all the red flags, and he's out for the second day of practice. I promise Titan fans, it is nothing to be worried about. It feels to me like that's the narrative the Titans want out there, and that's why they told Paul what they told.
Okay, well, I'm not going to speak for Paul on who he's talking to, but you seem to think that anytime a reporter talks to somebody that it's just a PR spin. That's maybe it could be. I think the thing with Sweat is I'm concerned about shape and weight and maturity. He has been very durable, so injuries haven't been a thing with him. If you twist an ankle and it's like, take a day off. I'm not. My concern level is basically very low with him. It's a little higher with Petit-Frere because he did have a nasty injury to end last season, and whether this is a continuation or something else, he does. He has to be more available. I mean, Jared's not wrong in calling him out for not being available enough. He has to be. So it's a little higher, and definitely it's higher with Sneed. I mean, I think anytime Sneed misses any time, even though obviously like during camp last year with the Chiefs, it was like no big deal, and he was great during the season. I still don't love it because you have to assume that's somehow knee related. and his knees are going to be a huge deal here moving forward to see whether it works out or not for the Titans to pay him what they did and guaranteed money to be a huge part of this defense moving forward. So I'm not high on any right now in May. I just can't in one day. We're going to, be out there next Wednesday, and they may all be out there, and 3 different guys are not, But I will say that there are different levels with those 3. And Snead, anytime miss for him is at least a slight raise of the eyebrow.
As far as Snead's concerned, right? Like the water's under the bridge, the toothpaste is out. They've already signed him. So why not just come out and say, like, hey, here's the issue with L'Jarius Snead's knees. He's not going to participate in OTAs ever. He's going to, in training camp, we'll have him on a certain program, and he may not practice, during the season, during the weeks very much. But this is our plan. Why not just come out and say what it is?
I mean, yeah, that'd be great, but that would be peculiar and irregular. So I don't expect it.
I mean, Vrabel got up there last year at the beginning of training camp and was like, hey, DeAndre's going to be gone a couple days of training camp. Everybody get used to it. And I think that
was right, but that was for a particular. Yeah, but that was like a personal reason he had to leave town. So he just didn't want people to ask about, is he hurt, blah, 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 right? That's a little different than what you're talking about.
Well, when Brian Callahan gets up there and says, yeah, I'm going to let you guys figure this out for yourself, I was like, okay, speculation season. I mean, that's, but he's bringing it upon himself, so it is what it is. Okay. Yesterday, Barry Trotz came on our program, and we talked about the Ryan McDonough trade, and we talked about what he's going to do with the money, and what he's going to do with the picks, and all that stuff. But, of course, the big question is the goalie. The discussion you guys have had in the morning, you guys have had in the midday, we've had the goalie. So this was that I asked Barry Trotz yesterday on the program. Here's what I said. I do wonder from this standpoint when it comes to the goalie. You said after the season was over that you'd like to get an extension done with UC Saros, that Saros has made it clear to you that he would like to re-sign. And, of course, there's business decisions that have to be made. For a lot of people around here, Barry, this is a big debate, in town as to, okay, do you take the money that you would be giving the goalie somewhere in the $7.5 probably to $8.5 million a year range, what will be, a 6, 7, 8-year contract, or do you take that money and use that on skaters, potentially forwards, and go long-term with Askarov as your goalie? Do you feel like you have to make a decision before July 1st, or I should say, around the draft, about whether or not you're going to commit 6 or 7 years to Saros, or if 6 or 7 years from now you think Askarov will be the goalie here? Do you feel like you're in that situation? Okay. I don't think anybody has a problem with that question.
No.
Maybe I worded it. Maybe I said too many words, but is what it is. Chris Mason texted me, Ronald McMason, and texted me and said, great interview with Barry yesterday, but boy, did you ever chicken out on your die on the sword takes about goaltending by saying some people around town are debating this. C. May said, chicken bleep. Was my question to Barry Trotz, given that I am in favor of trading the goalie, was it chicken that I didn't sit there with Barry and say, hey, Barry, I think you should trade the goalie. Are you going to trade the goalie?
So I don't think so. I mean, I think you're trying to find out information. I mean, you're doing an interview with someone that fans want to hear from. So, obviously we inject our opinion all day. And so I think if you get into a back and forth with someone, and it's fine to say, by the way, I think you should trade Saros, but I don't think that the question necessitated that. You asked him the question. We all want to know what he says to that question. I actually don't want the question to be kind of soiled by you giving your opinion. Like if you're interviewing me and then say, here's what I think, in my brain, I'm automatically like, well, God, I better think the opposite, because if he thinks that, then it has to be wrong. You know what I mean? So, no, it was not a chicken bleep question.
No, I think that's just kind of how you have to go about interviews. Like if you were talking to, someone else that's not Barry Trotz, like if you have Willie on the show, you say, well, I think that they should do this. I think it's fair We did talk on our show today about how we thought it was very interesting that you didn't bring up your Carl Taylor take.
Oh, about benching the goalie? They put the goalie back in.
Now that might be a little chickeny.
So I will say this. I actually had on like a little piece of hotel paper, I had all of those, like all of my questions, like not like written out verbatim, because obviously I can write all that out, but just like the topics I wanted to hit on. That was actually on the topic list. But then I decided to ask the question about the 5 second-round picks as opposed to asking the question about why Askarov got benched. Like I only had X amount. Whoops. I only had X amount of. I had to pick one or the other.
Oh,
and
so
I
you're
picked,
blaming Barry for being too long-winded.
No, I asked like 12 questions, and that was 12. And 13 was the one about, how stupid was it to bench the goalie, who, by the way, has been unbenched. And I think they're doing okay. I don't know. Caroline, who wins this week?
Great debates this week, everybody. I have to side with Joe here on the concern level about the players not out at practice. Because look, it's not nothing. But you did have a panic. You did.
I didn't have a panic.
Out.
You asked what my concern level was. I said existence.
You had a panic and a freak out yesterday.
That was yesterday. That's not Jared versus Joe.
It's still
and I didn't
on
have a panic.
Table.
I just am mad at all the people that say, "Oh, it'll be fine." You're the one that coined it. It'll be fine season.
I know.
Okay, well, it'll be fine.
I'm not saying you have to act like everything is fine. You also don't have to freak out, but I will give you credit for the Chris Mason thing because I don't think that you were.
See, I think Joe should lose for not saying Jalen Duncan sucks.
Of course you think that he should lose because of that, because you disagree with him.
And
also,
we came up with a list.
I don't think that it is fair of you to say about how horrendous of a coach Jason Hodaling was, but then not at least give Jalen Duncan a little bit of the benefit of the doubt when he was a 6th-round rookie last year.
Well, I mean, I would put it to you like,
what a novel concept.
It's fine with Nicholas Petit-Frere. I understand because he hadn't been playing. Jalen Duncan has. With
Kevin
a bad coach.
Kevin Lockery could still coach Michael Jordan, right? Now, he could win championships with Michael Jordan. Neither could Doug Collins.
I'm
That's
not saying
Phil
that
Jackson.
Jalen Duncan is Michael Jordan.
I'm just telling you, Jalen Duncan sucks.
There's a difference between
there's
sucks
nothing
and Michael
there.
Jordan.
There's nothing there. Nobody could
How
coach.
the heck
Jesus
do you know?
Christ,
There's nothing there.
Not get him to
quit
play.
pretending you can evaluate offensive linemen. Please stop.
Hey, I'm the one that told you guys from the jump that Dillard stunk. I told you guys after 3 days of practice last year, I left training camp, and I said, this offensive line's horrible. It's like, oh, no, Jared, you can't say that. They haven't put the pads on yet. So I feel very comfortable with that. All right, Jared versus Joe, presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. Thank you guys very much. Stillman and Company continues, 615-737-1025. First, let me tell everybody out there about White Bison. I love White Bison. White Bison is your local coffee shop with specialty coffee and so much more. Explore their selection of premium coffee blends, refreshing iced drinks, and food featuring fresh-made premium breakfast, lunch, and snack options. Download their app and join the White Bison Rewards program, and you can place orders on the go anytime. Get rewards, earn free coffee. Do it with White Bison. Again, my local coffee shop. If I'm getting coffee, that's where I'm going. If I'm getting a vanilla rooibos tea latte, that's where I'm going. Because again, White Bison, they got all kinds of stuff like the cinnamon beehive latte and the iced honey nut macchiato. Find your perfect cup at White Bison, where it's finely crafted for you every day. That's White Bison and twice daily. What are you craving? Still company, short segment, this segment went long on Jared versus Joe. I still can't believe I lost that. So short segment here. We're going to do what we did yesterday. We're going to let the text line pick the next topic. On one hand, I have got to rant about something that a lot of people I think will agree with. And not only will a lot of people agree with this rant, but it's honestly, it disgusts me. That's one option. So if you want that, text in disgust. The other option is Joe and Paul were complaining about the Titans and about how they allow media coverage. And I have a thought on that. So your options are Joe or PK or my disgusted rant. You pick in the text line 615-737-1025, and we'll hit whatever you end up picking next. Let's also give something away. Be caller 5 right now at 615-737-1025, and you'll win a pair of tickets to see Jamie Johnson at First Bank Amphitheater on June 28th. Good luck there. All right, let's talk Window Nation. That's right. I actually had a great chat with my friends at Window Nation today. I'll tell you, Window Nation, they are my favorite. And I know there are a lot of different companies that are out there that are, trying to get your business, and they're stuffing your mailbox with all these ads that say, oh, they do this with this great deal and I can't talk about those companies, but I can talk about Window Nation. And I absolutely love them. I've told the story that I had Window Nation out to my home for the free in-home estimate, and they checked my windows. Probably took 3 hours out of their day, 4 if you count, the commuting there and back. And they basically told me like, hey, you don't need to replace your windows. I said, you could be kidding me. They're like, no, your windows are fine. And that told me that they were an honest company that you can trust. And I know a lot of man, I need to replace my windows, especially if you've got a window that the sun just shoots right at. Trust my friends at Window Nation because, again, they are trustworthy. And I can't tell you about the other companies. I can tell you about how great Window Nation is. Plus, right now, they got a special deal. So if you've been thinking about replacing your windows, now is the time to replace your windows. Now is the time to just go ahead and do it. With the semi-annual sale, you can save 50% off all windows along with no interest for 5 years, plus bonus savings with that console today. Call 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com. Again, 50% off all windows. 50% off, no interest for 5 years. Bonus savings, 866-90-NATION, windownation.com.
now we turn our attention to ESPN's New York Knicks, who lost in Game 7 to the Pacers. You know, Pacers did play in the game. I just want to let ESPN know. If you want to buy into East Coast bias, you have every reason to buy into ESPN's East Coast bias watching that game. How about some impartiality here? Okay. I was embarrassed for ESPN because it felt like it was all about the Knicks. Even at halftime, it was about the Knicks. The Pacers aren't exciting. I get it. You know, not big names, not a sexy team. But you still have to cover the game. You got to be fair. I don't need a Stephen A. Smith arrival video. I don't need a pep talk with him and Spike Lee. He doesn't work for the Knicks. He worked for ESPN. I was really surprised. And I didn't care who won. But after that, I was rooting for the Pacers. I thought, you know what? Let's make this uncomfortable for you. And Indiana was the better team.
That was Dan Patrick on his show, just, again, disgusted with ESPN on Sunday for their coverage of the Knicks. And I've ranted about ESPN in the past. I don't rant on it as much as everybody else. I'm not somebody that's, go woke, go broke all the time when it comes to ESPN. But most of you voted on this and about, what am I disgusted by? I'm disgusted by ESPN. I've given up on ESPN. I'm just going to tell you guys right now. I turned on the TV today on First Take, and they're sitting there and they're talking about, do the Knicks have a roster capable of winning a championship? Well, considering that the Knicks just lost, I'm going to guess the answer to that is no. But I don't care. And what's nuts is if you look at the national TV ratings, the New York Knicks don't matter outside of New York. ESPN is a network that is for the entire country. And yet all they do is talk Knicks, 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 Knicks. And the reason they do that is because all the people that work at ESPN work in New York, and all the people that pick the people who work in New York and tell the people, what to talk about, live in New York and care about the Knicks. But that's not the only reason why I'm giving up on ESPN. Today, they had a segment about hockey on First Take. They segment about hockey on First Take. It was 25 seconds. It was Mad Dog and Stephen A. Who do you have, the Panthers or the Rangers? And Mad Dog talked for a little bit, and Mad Dog keeps up with it a tiny bit. I mean, a tiny. Stephen A. was like, well, the Knicks last won the Rangers last won the championship in 1994, so I'll take the Rangers. I'm like, that's embarrassing. And I don't get it because they talk so much basketball on ESPN, Sports Center, everything, basketball. And while basketball has higher ratings than the NHL, basketball has nowhere near the ratings of the NFL or college football. So talk football, because that's what I'd rather hear you talk about. Talk about OTAs, because I care about that more than I care about the Knicks. And they're not going to do it because they care about basketball. Hockey, and again, hockey does not compare to basketball, but hockey in terms of viewership is actually the highest it's ever been. Basketball is declining, and ESPN's going to basketball. And their play-by-play crew sucks. They had a good booth with Van Gundy and Mark Jackson, and they fired them, for no reason. They fired them. They fired them, and now they're booth with Doris Burke and JJ Redick. JJ Redick, the most smug, I couldn't give a rat's ass what JJ Redick thinks. And he's in the booth. They're terrible. And then on top of it, the radio network ESPN has is a joke. They don't have any shows on ESPN radio that are worth listening to. Not any shows. I mean, they use Mike and Mike, even though, I kind of got bored by Mike and Mike. They played it safe. But Mike and Mike, I could listen to Mike and Mike. Colin Cowherd, I loved Colin Cowherd when he was on there. I wasn't a big Dan Le Batard guy, but at least, I could watch. The ESPN radio network today, the ESPN radio network, terrible. It's embarrassing how bad ESPN's got. So between the constant barrage of basketball talk coupled with just this unrelenting love to talk New York Knicks. Like when they talk Dallas Cowboys all the time, I get it. And I actually kind of care because I watch Cowboy games. I don't care about the Knicks. I don't think most of America cares about the Knicks. And then their radio network, talk about just mailing it in. I mean, it's embarrassing. And I could sit here and tell you this is what ESPN should do, and I could do that. And I think I know better than they do about how to run ESPN. I really believe that. But instead of that, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to tell you, I've given up. I've given up on ESPN. And what's amazing is ESPN paid $1 gazillion to get Pat McAfee on there for him to do his show. And it's like, oh, McAfee, he's just incredible. He's insane. You want to know why McAfee is good? Why people watch McAfee? Because he talks football. That's why. Football, football, football. Give me a little baseball. Give me a little basketball. Give me a little hockey. Football, football, football. That's what America wants. That's what McAfee does. That's why McAfee gets people to watch, because he talks football. That's why. And so between all the decisions ESPN's made over the years, I've given up. I've given up. And the one good thing they had with basketball, Jeff Van Gundy, they got rid of. So their radio network is a mess. Their TV shows suck this time of year. They do nothing but talk basketball. And I do not care about the New York Knicks. Do not care. Not going to care about the Knicks. And that's my disgust. Fitz will join us next since Vandy Baseball's got an early start. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 The Game. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063. The game streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Vandy Baseball versus Tennessee. A showdown comes on right after us. So Jason Fitz has been kind enough to join us earlier ahead of time. Fitz joins us on the show now. Fitz, I have a bone up my rear end that I want to start off on, which maybe you have some insight into. So I have watched one quarter so far of the NBA playoffs. It was Game 7 between Minnesota and Denver. And even that was whatever. I don't care. And I understand that some people care, and I'm not everybody. But the NBA TV ratings are going down, down, down. I think they're down 12% year over year. And yet, the NBA is going to make double on its new TV contracts with NBC and Amazon and ESPN. How is that possible? That the sport is less and less popular and yet makes double the amount of TV money? Help me out here.
So much of it comes down to the limited amount of captive audience opportunities now for whether it's streaming services or whether it's broadcast partners. There are so few actual I've got to watch this right now moments, and there are so few things that you cannot just fast forward through commercials that even if numbers are down, all the leagues are trying to make more money than ever simply because it is so rare now to be able to force people to sit there and not just watch the show, but also watch the commercials associated with it. You can't DVR it and watch it later most of the time. Like, you're not going to miss out on the phenomenon by simply watching it on demand. You're not going to be able to fast forward through it. You have to sit there and watch it. So it's not so much about what the NBA ratings are doing, because you're right, they are worse. It's about the fact that there's less and less that's capable of actually getting people to sit in front of their TV for commercials, and everything about the live sporting events for every sport is a vehicle for broadcasting commercials. So they're the benefit of the fact, they're the benefactors of the fact that there are less windows of opportunity for advertisers to find a way to buy any sort of eyeballs. So they win because there's less competition.
Fitz, do you think that the reason why ESPN talks so much basketball, you were at ESPN, do you think the reason why their talk shows talk so much basketball is because people tune in to watch them talk about basketball, or is it because they're trying to pump the fact that they have basketball?
So it's a combination of both, and I'll be like wildly transparent with you on all of that. Like, so, you know, the bosses get the dailies on shows like First Take, and they know the second that people tune out. So if they see that generally people are not watching through it, then they will stop talking about it for sure. But they also have a fine line and a responsibility because of the partnership and the broadcasting with the networks where they'll talk about it. Last year when I was on ESPN radio with the show at the time, we went to the bosses and said, hey, Denver looks like they're going to go on a run before the playoffs started. Should we start booking Denver guests? And we got an answer on the radio side of clearly hell no, that nobody cares about Denver nationally on radio, so it's not something we should be talking about. So they definitely respected it there. But when it comes to the TV side of it, you know, they look at the dailies for First Take and for Get Up every day, and then they use that with the combination of Q views that they get out of the YouTube clips and social media clips, and they figure out what actually has traction. So this final, like, for everybody that thinks, oh, Boston losing could be a great story, we end up with an Indiana-Minnesota final. Who cares? Like, generally, like, if you're not an NBA head, who cares? I think that's a worst-case scenario, but ESPN is tied in with the league enough that they'll have to talk about it some.
Well, you say that. They talk so much Knicks, and I am convinced nobody outside of New York cares about the Knicks. But I think they all live in New York, and all the bosses live in New York, so they think people care about the Knicks.
Well, there's also this moment of population concentration, and eyeballs are ratings, right? So if they're getting ratings in New York, if they're getting more people in New York to watch, then they don't care about Paducah. They just care about getting the numbers, right? Like, they don't care about making sure that Louisville fans are happy. They just care about getting the overall numbers.
Wouldn't talking like Dallas Cowboys OTAs get them bigger numbers than talking about New York Knicks basketball?
For the most part, yeah. There's no doubt. There's a reason why, you know, Greeny says everyday football is king, and that's something that's said in the meetings all the time. Like, hey, especially with the Cowboys, what are our Cowboys angles? Because people watch that, you know. And so you're right. It would get higher ratings. I think their attempt to maintain some balance and integrity in covering the NBA is by talking about the easiest thing possible, which is the soap opera around the Knicks. Like, when's the last time we saw a really smart show that came in and entertained? Like, NFL Live does a really nice job of entertaining, but then also giving these great play breakdowns. They do those things. There is not an NBA equivalent in ESPN right now at all. I know Legs does great work, and there are guys that can do it, but they're not consistently. People don't flock to sit there and learn the why and the how in the NBA. So then what you have is lazy reporting about whatever the biggest soap opera is, and the Knicks give you a much better shot at getting a rating point than the Pacers do or the Timberwolves do, or actual real basketball talk to us, which frustrates, by the way, the basketball analysts that I've worked with there. They get really Jay Will was told repeatedly to be simpler in his basketball content and to not talk as much about the whys and the hows. And it used to frustrate him like crazy. But ESPN is sort of just stuck in this. They're not the NFL network, so they gotta try and cover everything. So that's their attempt, is to do it in a really shallow way with the Knicks.
Last one for you, Fitz. Is there anything that you take out of any of these OTAs minus somebody getting hurt?
I think what you can learn is vibe and culture a little bit. I know it's early, especially for the Titans. It's early with Callahan, but every coach has the chance to bring a stamp to the organization of how they're going to be and what they're going to be. I never hide my Raiders fandom. I had people after the first day of OTAs with Josh McDaniels 2 years ago that were texting me, I know over there, that were saying this thing's going to be a disaster. And I'm not saying that one day in, but sometimes you just got to look at it and say, what's the culture? What's the vibe? What's the energy? Do people seem like they're happy to be here early in the grind? Is there sort of a bounce in the step? I think you can look for those things. That's really camaraderie is what you're trying to establish in the OTAs. There's nothing football-wise, but I do think energy, environment, I think atmosphere, those things can matter in the OTAs, and I think that's where Callahan can really start to step in and show everybody who he is as the leader of the Titans.
Jason Fitz, as always, Yahoo Sports, Fox Sports Radio, joining us on the program. Fitz, great stuff. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you sliding up for us, as always.
Heck yeah, brother. Enjoy the baseball game. Thanks, man.
Yep, Jason Fitz joining us on the program. Speaking of the baseball game, that is coming up next here on the program. I'm just going to say this. I think Vandy needs it. I think Tennessee needs it because they're trying to be the number one seed. And so if they could run through Hoover and win the SEC and Kentucky lose it, then I think, Tennessee will feel good about themselves getting a number one seed or whatever. But I think Vandy needs it because baseball is Vandy's thing. And Tennessee is kind of taking it from them. But they won the last game. Let's see if Vandy can do it again. Vandy baseball, the pregame comes up next. Again, Vandy versus UT. We shall see. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. That's right. I love Hiller. They take great care of my home, and they can do the exact same for you. Have you ever had a contractor come to your home and you feel like it takes forever? You feel like you've wasted your entire day. Well, when you call Hiller, you don't have to camp out all day waiting. Why? Because they'll give it to you right then and there. I go to happyhiller.com and schedule it right from my phone, and then everything comes up on my phone, and it is so simple. It's so easy. It's so simple. It's great. I love them. Be a happy camper this month with 0% interest financing for 24 months on select HVAC systems, generators, and tankless water heaters. Or take advantage of Hiller's $99 drain cleaning special. Take care of your home systems before the peak summer temperatures hit, and they are coming, and you know that. So get them taken care of right now. Visit happyhiller.com today for details. That is Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I don't know who they're rooting for because they are proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today.